Thank you for joining me in this demonstration of my first robot built in 2006. You'll notice that it's going to poll each of its sensors to figure out what to do every second. Poll. P-O-L-L. Poll. This is a verb. Poll is an action, and I really did build a robot, my first robot in 2006, where it constantly polled its pieces of hardware to figure out what to do every second. So what does that mean? Well, we can take a hint from the regular word poll that we use in real life. You'll notice that midterm elections are happening about now in 2018. You know, in political elections, sometimes people send out poll workers to figure out what the citizenry wants. Maybe they prefer a certain candidate for an election. Maybe they want to support some kind of proposition. You go out into the neighborhood to an individual person and ask, what do you think? Well, in engineering, in electrical engineering and computer science, to poll means something very similar. My robot that I built in 2006 was kind of rudimentary, and it had a very basic controller. It had a brain, it had a computer that kind of helped it decide what to do, and it had different body parts, let's say. It had motors, actuators, things that moved. It also had sensors, force sensors and position sensors that could detect where all the different parts were in space and how heavy things were in different spots. And all together, when I put these sensors and the controller and all these metal pieces together, it was supposed to simulate a human leg. It was also really scary because it was like 50 pounds of moving metal, and you did not want to stand by it because if you don't want to get your hand caught in two pieces of heavy steel and aluminum. But regardless, the brain had an algorithm in it where every couple milliseconds it was going to go and check in with sensor 1. Hey, sensor 1, did you detect anything that I should respond to? And sensor 1 is like, nah, I didn't detect anything. So the controller goes to sensor 2. Hey, sensor 2, did you detect a change in position that I got to respond to? And then sensor 2 is like, no, I didn't detect anything this time. And then the controller goes to sensor 3. Hey, sensor 3, did you detect a change in force that I should respond to? And sensor 3 might go, no, I didn't. And so the controller then starts over and goes back to sensor 1 and asks again, and then sensor 2 and sensor 3, and it just keeps on looping until finally sensor 3, let's say, says, hey, I detected something. I'm glad you asked me. I detected a change in position. And then the controller's like, oh, whoa, that's important. I better move this part of my robot now in response. The controller polled each device, each piece of hardware, each sensor. It constantly, every couple milliseconds, was checking in on them. It was like those election workers that are constantly checking in on the individuals in their community just to see where the pulse of the community is. Well, that's kind of what the controller of my robot is doing. So to poll basically means, in electrical parlance, to constantly check in on a piece of hardware to detect what's happening in a system. And maybe you can respond to it. By the way, to poll a system constantly is not always efficient. It's not always the best way of monitoring your system, because sometimes you might build a system that is monitoring something that doesn't happen very often. Like, let's say you build a robot or a system to detect whenever Halley's Comet comes by, every 17 years or whatever. Well, your robot is not going to detect changes very often. So why would you poll it every second? That's a big waste. So in that case, you would not want to poll your devices. You wouldn't want to constantly, every couple milliseconds, check in on them. That's annoying. That's resource heavy. That's costly. So there are other ways of designing your systems to be smart. And it's a really neat field to think about. That is our engineering word of the day. Our electrical engineering word of the day, actually, or is it computer science word of the day? Hi there, this is Pius, former builder of robots and current podcast host. If you like the engineering word of the day, check out more at engineeringwordoftheday.com. Also, check out my other awesome long-form podcast all about engineering education. Go on over to k12engineering.net to check it out. Thanks.